Hey, what's happening, Wargamers? I am trying this out. Hopefully, it is working. Not too sure just yet, so just bear with me as I just get last little bits and pieces put together here. But if you are joining along on this, as you know, I recently picked up the Lord of the Rings starter box that has the Battle of Pelennor Fields, and just figured something new to get into, something new to try out. There is a community locally that is playing the game, and it's always had me a little bit interested. So basically, I'm using this as an opportunity to see what I'm doing with the game. So today, if you guys were checking out any of the preambles to this, basically I'm keeping this one simple. I'm going to be just building the Morannon Orcs here from the starter box. So nice and simple. Looks like there's about 12 per. I don't know if I'll get through all of them as I go, but in the meantime, I'll just share some thoughts. Now, if you can hear me, I would, if you could just give a quick note to see if audio is going through, just because I am doing this on the phone and I'm not too sure about the audio quality. I do have it right next to my head, so that would be great if you can hear me. So yeah, okay, thanks, Andrew. That's great. So yeah, I mean, just gonna start really simple here. Just gonna start getting these guys cut out. And of course, if you are not catching the live stream, I am going to be trying to get this onto the YouTube channel as well, just to sort of capitalize on wherever I can put this sort of content. But yeah, so I have to say, very early on, I remember when the Lord of the Rings game first came out. That would have been back in the early 2000s. I was still sort of getting into Games Workshop games to begin with. At the time, I was still pretty much playing BattleTech and nothing but BattleTech. Even though I did have a little 40K stuff, I had some fantasy stuff kicking around. But I remember at the time there was something about the Lord of the Rings stuff that it didn't really mesh with me, and I'm not entirely sure why. It could have been the aesthetic at the time. It could have been the scale. It could have just been that I was a kid with no money and didn't know what the hell to do with anything. So I didn't really jump on. I remember a buddy of mine who ran the gaming club that I was at up in Barrie. I remember he ended up getting a box of it, and he was kind of excited about it. And for whatever reason, even though he was able to get me all enthusiastic and excited about other games, he wasn't able to do it for this one as well. And yeah, again, I have no clue why actually that was the case. So a little bizarre in that case. But here we are. It is now, oh geez, 18 years later. Yeah, here we are. I'm taking a look at Lord of the Rings finally. I do remember though, as I got more into other games, I remember taking a look at the Lord of the Rings models, and I always really liked the look of them. Just the design elements, the way Peter Jackson imagined everything into the films and how it was translated into the models was actually always really cool. Yeah, that was kind of neat. So just wanted to paint. Yeah, I'm actually right there with you, Andrew. The Oliphant, I think is what it was called. That giant that giant elephant thing that came stalking in, and your Legolas had that great kill on, and that just completely takes you out of the movie, but you didn't care because it was just too darn cool. Yeah, I have to admit, even though I have no intention of playing I think it's the Haradrim or the Easterlings. I don't remember which force that's with. I have to admit, I'm kind of tempted to paint that Oliphant as well. Yeah, yeah, definitely an instant squig off. That's for sure. But then again, I'm sure as an orc player, you can turn anything into an orc thing without too much difficulty. But yeah, I mean, it's been really cool. One thing I will say though about the game that always kind of concerned me was the notion of hero hammer. And I don't know how many people who are going to be watching this who are really aware of Hero Hammer or played through Hero Hammer era. But Hero Hammer was basically a time in 40k in fantasy in which essentially your armies didn't matter. It all came down to your hero. It came down to what they would do. It came down to the fights that they were winning, and basically it came down to just how much you could load up your hero with as far as magical gear goes, and basically just abuse the whole system. I think we were seeing it with as recently as like 6th or 7th edition fantasy before they pulled the plug on it. We saw it with, I think it was like 3rd, 4th edition 40k. We were really seeing it, and it was problematic because we were spending all this money on models that were essentially just being used to throw away, to use as chaff, just to keep your own hero safe, so your own hero could then turn around and do the exact same thing to the other player. And it was not a fun way to play. I don't know how many people really experienced it, but it was not a fun way to play the game, because you felt rather impotent if you happened to be playing an army that did not have one of these super uber hero type models. Then you were kind of stuck. You felt a little helpless. So when I was looking at early Middle Earth, early I guess at that time it was like Lord of the Rings strategy game or something like that. That was something that I was seeing a lot of it. It really felt like the heroes in the game, with their might points, their will points, their fate points, just had way too much influence on the game, and that too much of the game was essentially you throwing your chaff models at the heroes and just having Aragorn or one of the other heroes just kind of eat through you as an effect. Now, not having gotten into it personally, I don't know how realistic of an issue that was, but it was definitely something that colored my opinion of the game and kept me from really wanting to get into it. Now, I've been told at this point that is nowhere near as big an issue as it once was, and admittedly, having taken a quick run through the rule book, I think I might be inclined to agree with that statement. Now, of course, if any of you guys that are watching this have played the game or are more familiar with the game, definitely sound off in the comments below. Like if the Hero Hammer thing is definitely an issue with the current edition. But it looks like now that things like fate points and might points are the ones I think I understand the most right now, and they really seem to be designed just to sort of modify your dice rolls a little bit more, so it doesn't look like you can roll over an enemy model as easily, but you can influence the combat a little bit more. And I think that's a much better way of going about the use of points like that. Now, I'm not entirely sure, but right now my understanding is that like will points are a little bit more suited towards the magic users of the game, and that there's like fate points which can do some other things for you. Again, I've only gone through the rulebook quickly. I don't know the full things on it yet, but I'm definitely interested to get this on the table and see how that really pans out, because I have to say I love the notion of leading a band of orcs, because as you might have caught in some earlier comments, Sauron got the raw deal here. So I'm definitely going Team Mordor, Team Sauron with this. I'll paint up the Rohan Riders of Rohan, but you know what? I need an evil army to play with. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that and seeing what happens with it. Excuse the noise here. I got to get the bases. But I do have quite a bit of excitement going into this one that I did not have before, which I'm really looking forward to. Okay, so let's get these orcs on here. I love that these starter orcs are all like essentially one-piece models. You don't have to do too much work with them. Although my glue, on the other hand, there we go. I'm about to say this might be a very short video if I can't get the glue out. So, but yeah, just snap fit in. All right, there we go. All right. I gotta say, like I've seen a couple things out there of what the community is doing. Just recently, I joined into a whole bunch of the Lord of the Rings online communities. Like I think there's like the Great Britain Hobbit League or something like that, as well as you know, an Ontario-based one for something more local. And I'm spending a little bit of time checking out what's available. I know locally, at a local store, Phoenix Rising, just yesterday, they got through an event that was actually run by a friend of mine. So I mean, if she catches this or watches this, you know, congrats on running what appeared to be a strong, successful event. I would have liked to have made it out myself, but right now I don't want to say I'm overextending right now, but I have a lot of hobby stuff going onto my plate at the moment. I'm just going to adjust this light here. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to quite make it to the event. But you know, as things calm down event wise and obligation wise, I'll be working my way out to very. But man, does it man, what do you mean by that, Andrew? No, you are. That's how bad my memory is. I think I've completely just forgotten what exactly I was actually even talking about, aside from overextending. So, are we back here? Okay, I think I lost the connection there briefly, but I think I am back. Yeah, I am definitely overextending. I mean, I'm doing an Infinity League at a new store that's opened up locally. I'm going to be taking part, hopefully, in some kill team with them as well, and then of course there's a 40K campaign that I'm going to be taking part in as well. That starts in October. So definitely overextending a little bit. But it's all part of just trying to jump back into the hobby as a whole. So, well, we'll see how well it actually takes off. So, I love the simplicity of these little guys here. It doesn't take much work at all. Just getting them nice and put together here. And yeah, this is basically a breeze. Yeah, that's right. We got our project as well. I'm not going into too much detail on with a lot of people on that one, but we're definitely going to be chatting sometime soon about that one, because I think that's going to be an exciting project. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy that one. So, oh, come on, get on there, you. Okay, yeah, there we go. Ah, yeah, so there's a bunch of orcs already put together right there. Okay, so let's get some more done here. But yeah, I gotta say though, just in general, I'm really digging. I'm really liking what Games Workshop has been doing of late. It is such a different company than what we were just seeing even a year or two ago. During like 40K's 7th edition and whatnot. It is they seem to be paying much more attention to what the community is actively looking for. The fact that they are engaging with the community is huge. I still remember a time in which they were closing down what little online interactions they had with people. I don't know who remembers them, but they used to have like a really bad forum on their website. It was next to impossible to find anything from previous threads, existing threads, short of having to like dig through just page after page of just useless diatribe, and it was not a good setup. It was not a good setup at all, and unfortunately things just got a little bit worse when they started cutting off contact with it at all. I think that was like during the Kirby era, the Kirby years of things. Yeah, it was really bad. I remember still back in high school trying to go on those forums, and at the time, I always considered myself rather internet and forum savvy and whatnot. Even I was looking at that going, how do I even begin to navigate this mess of a forum? But no, like these days, I mean, they're utilizing social media amazingly. Every other post is still about squats, Andrew. If you go on any post from the Warhammer community or anywhere like that, every second post is still people complaining about, where's squats? When are you going to bring back squats? Why don't you listen to the community and bring back squats? Like one day they're going to bring back squats. They're not going to sell them. They're going to go like, this is why we didn't do these things. But no, every second post was basically complaint or something like that, or something to do with a little bit of entitlement from the gaming community, and it was brutal. So I mean, having different communities spring up, things like like Daka Daka or what is it, Bolter and Chainsword, I think. Or communities like Bell of Lost Souls and Spiky Bits. Take them for what you will. I mean, we all know the reputation that Bell of Lost Souls and Spiky Bits has. Yeah, War Seer is another really big one. Like these communities kind of showed that there was a greater need. There was a greater need for this sort of online community, for this sort of feedback, and I think it's these communities that also kind of made Games Workshop finally realize that they had to buckle a little bit and actually do this. Now it's just amazing that it took essentially a change of the leadership at the top to handle that. Whereas you look at all these other companies that are entering or have entered the digital age, and this is a lesson that a lot of companies learned 10 years ago. It's not something that you would have figured people would have still been trying to figure out today. And here's Games Workshop just coming into it so late in the game. And honestly, if it weren't for the fact that they're kind of the top dogs in the field right now, like there's some other companies that are definitely making some strong inroads, but nothing really competes with Games Workshop in this market just yet. And probably won't for another 10 years at least, I'm betting. But I mean, it was simply by virtue of being the biggest fish in the pond that I think allowed them to survive that lack of community, that lack of interaction. But also by virtue of not stepping in and taking that role themselves. Look at some of the things that we've actually gotten out of it. I mean, look at over the past 10 years, the explosion of individual web content on it. Companies like Beasts of War, Mini Wargaming, Ash at Guerrilla Miniature Games. What else is there? There's all of a sudden names are Striking Scorpion is doing some really good stuff. You got like Chapter Master Valric, who's doing really, really interesting stuff, keeping abreast of everything. We've had these content producers step into this void and basically just they've made the community. Blue Table Painting's an interesting one, I think. I think they started off with the best of intentions, and I think of late they're fixing some of the issues that stemmed from that Chaos Dwarf commission that popped up about like 5 years back. But like I don't know the full story on that one. But that one's kind of an interesting one, seeing how one bad event can kind of, I don't want to say sabotage your brand, but it can definitely step you back. Tabletop Tactics is another really good one that's out there. It comes up quite a bit, like when you see the almost weekly post on where's a good place to go watch battle reports. Tabletop Tactics is up there quite consistently. Winter's SEO. Is another one that you see quite often. So like we're seeing really cool content, and that's all stuff that while Games Workshop still had their hand on everything, we weren't seeing from them. So by them turning down their role, yeah, Aegis Brand Studios. I would definitely love to be included amongst those big names someday. That'd be absolutely amazing. You and me, Andrew, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get this YouTube channel up to that point, and we're gonna do some awesome things. And you're gonna help me with that, all your pink wog and orky goodness. But yeah, like it's incredible for everything we lost when Games Workshop essentially shut down their social media interaction. We gained so much more. Like, it wasn't immediately apparent, but it is something that's having long-reaching effects. I mean, the fact that a company like Mini Wargaming was able to transition from being a storefront to effectively being the largest content producer for wargaming material, at least for Games Workshop wargaming material, although it looks like they're starting to branch out a little bit more. That would have been unheard of. Like, you never would have considered it, but here we are. They're able to do it. They're able to make it work. They're able to employ a staff, which I mean, when I was there, we were just under 10 people, but now I think they're close to a dozen people, if not more, at this point. And it's crazy. I mean, they have their bunker opening up. They're expanding their operation. They're just doing really cool stuff. And it's been great for the hobby as well, because it operates as an excellent starting point. So, and I think that's yeah, you used to work there as well. Like, I can't, you ran like tournaments there and worked in the storefront, I believe, if I recall correctly. And I think that's actually how we first ended up meeting, if I recall. But yeah, it's really neat to see how the community has stepped in and done that, and almost created a bit of a gateway into the hobby as a whole, just because of that. So I mean, it's had some pretty far-reaching effects as a result. So yeah, really neat in that sense. So, actually, that brings me to another thing that I think we're seeing some really good things coming out of Games Workshop right now, and we're seeing a return to the idea of these sort of gateway games, these introductory games. And for a long time, we weren't seeing that. Everything almost felt like it was being geared just towards people who have been in the game for a very long time. And as a result, it kind of turned some people off the game. I mean, Warhammer Fantasy is a perfect example of that. I mean, it's been analyzed to death at this point, but I think one of the big key factors that kind of caused fantasy to be scrapped the way it was that it was getting unwieldy. It was not easy to get into the game, even with those 2-player starter boxes. Because those 2-player starter boxes would get you enough for a small game, but the average game still required like an additional, $500, $600, $700 worth of purchases by the time that fantasy was kind of petering out. And I mean, sure, that works for people who have the disposable income, but think about the high school student who wants to get into the game. Think about the college student who just discovered a cool community and wants to take part in it. They can't. It's way too expensive for the most part. And as a result, we weren't seeing growth in the game. We weren't seeing new players come into it. And I think that's something that a lot of veteran players, I don't want to say they necessarily don't think about it, but I don't know if they really take it into as much consideration as they should. That for the game to continue, sure, we're going to keep playing, but we need people to play with, and we weren't getting those new players, and especially with how expensive the game was. I remember during my time living up in Toronto, with one of the major city in Ontario, if not Canada. I would go to the Games Workshop there, and there was a couple of young guys in there, but I have to admit, I don't really ever recall seeing a lot of new people show up to the game. And that was always a little upsetting, that we didn't really see that. So it's it was one of those things where we kind of had to. Oh, excuse the dog there. He just kind of took off. And we weren't getting that new blood, and without the new blood, you don't get more sales. Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very easy to drop a down payment on a home on this game if you're not careful. It Now, granted, I mean, the longer you're in the game, the higher that number is always going to be. But for those of us who've been in the game for a long time, we also had the benefit of being able to buy significantly cheaper as well. I'm sure there's a number of people who still remember the days of, what was that? I think it was like 3 rhinos for $25 or something like that. And I miss those days. Whew, I don't think I've talked this much straight for a while. But yeah, so I mean we're seeing we're seeing these great new starter boxes, these gateway games coming out. And I'm not even just talking about like the 2-player starter boxes, like things like what was it, like Forgebane or whatever the latest Gene Stealer Space Wolf one coming out. Yeah, I remember Thanksgiving as well. But also things like they just released that Space Marine board game thing coming out. What was it? They also had like Lost Patrol last year. They had what was it that Tooth and Claw was the Space Wolf one. What else did they have? They had Execution Force. They had Death Watch Overkill. And these are all ways of giving people a self-contained game, but at the same time giving them models that they can then use for the greater game as a whole. And that's huge. I mean, that's amazing. Like I have to admit that's one of my favorite things to do. Like I grab a lot of these boxes, not necessarily because I want to play the game or whatnot, but because they're amazing value. But it also gives me plenty of stuff that if I ever meet somebody who says, I'm interested in getting into this game, I can turn around and say, well, you know what? Pick a faction. Let's play. Let's get you into it. And I've done that a couple times, and it's great. It makes it a lot easier. It also means that for a new player, you're not sinking in nearly as much money to discover whether or not you like the game. You and a friend can drop, in Canada, because that's the numbers I'm going to be familiar with, you and a friend can drop, $80-$90 a pop and get a 2-player starter box or get one of these starter games, and you'll have a good idea on whether or not this is something you want to put more money into, or if it's something that, hey, you know what, it's not for you. And that's huge. That's something that the the game has needed in order to really survive and thrive. It needs that ability to draw in new players without the sticker shock of the price. And that's even more so if you're considering, a younger player who might have to rely on mom and dad to pay for this starter box for them. Yeah, the $100 starter box armies are amazingly good value. Like, hey Robert, they're fantastic value. What was it? I think I priced down the AdMech one at one time, and I think for the $100 Canadian. Let's see, you basically get what is it? I think you end up getting like the Skitarii for free in it, or something like that. Because I think like the Doom Crawler and the Tech Priest Dominus alone make up the $100 value and then some, and then you got that extra box. So I think you're getting like $40-$50 Canadian savings, just by buying that box set, and that's just impressive beyond belief. And makes for great value, makes for a fantastic way to get into the game. So I don't know, for anyone who's joining in here, who might not have been around since the start, basically I'm just sharing some thoughts as I put together my Morannon Orcs from the Lord of the Rings Battle of Pelennor Fields box here, and I'm pretending to know what I'm talking about when it comes to this hobby and everything, and just waxing nostalgic for some things. So far, everyone who's joined in, thanks so much for popping in. This has been a neat little experiment so far, and it gives me something to do while I'm plugging away at these guys. Okay, so let's see. What have we talked about so far? I think I've talked a little bit about about my initial impressions on the rules for Middle Earth strategy games. I think I've talked a little bit about the social media and how it's opened the gateway for Games Workshop to or for other companies to spring up and start doing bat reps and other content type stuff. So we've talked about entry games. I think I'd spend a little. Let's talk about the models for a moment. I think this is something that's worth talking about. The monopose models, I think, are kind of a really. I think they're a great option, and I don't think they get nearly as much credit as they deserve. Sure, they're not as convertible as say the multi-part plastic kits, but they were never meant to be that convertible. Like, sure, people can do them. Like, there are more talented people than I out there that have done some awesome things with the monopose kits. But think about it. Look at the simplistic nature of this guy, right? Like, he's, you glue him to the base. He's got his spear right here. You glue that on there. And with quite literally like 1-2 steps, you don't even have to clean him really. And you have something that's ready to be put on the table. Yeah, that is true. They are similar to the old pewter models in that regard. There was not a lot of variation in those ones. But at the very least, they come in cheaper than the old pewter models. At least in most cases, like you can get these mass produced. But I think these are fantastic. Like, you look at what is it? Whatever the name of the 8th edition starter box was, and I can't remember what that was called. But they're all effectively monopose Space Marines, right? And it's something that you don't need to put a lot into. You can get them on the table really fast, and you can play a game. And we have the same thing with these guys. Like, you look at these Morannon, I have to do nothing with them. I'm cleaning him. I'm getting rid of mold lines and whatnot. But for the most part, I do not have to do anything with these models to get them on the table. Oh, Andrew, I think there's a lot of people who might be view this who don't know what a dreadsock is. It is absolutely one of my favorite things to threaten another player with, especially if you have the old school spiky chaos dreadnought. Okay, so for people who don't know, the old school dreadnoughts, when they were all metal and they were a wad of pewter and weighed, about 10 pounds, I exaggerate, but they were heavy. And they had lots of wonderful, jagged, pointy bits on them. So what a common threat was to dreadsock your opponent. And what that meant was you were basically going to put your dreadnought into a sock or a satchel or something, and you were going to use it like a sap and basically whack them over the head with it. I'm quite convinced that if anyone had ever legitimately dreadsocked somebody, there might be some serious lasting damage on that one. But it was such a wonderful threat to utter to people across the table that you were going to turn around and dreadsock them, just because the sheer how inane of a threat it was. Yeah, you're going away for murder. Well, that depends on the dreadnought used. If you use a Space Marine dreadnought, maybe you're just getting assault. If you're using Bjorn, it can go 50-50. If you're using a Chaos dreadnought, though, you're done. You're getting convicted and going away for life. But no, it was such a wonderful threat. But yeah. But anyway, yeah. So back to the original point that I was making with these, as far as monopose models go. Because you're able to get them onto the table really fast, you're not even forcing people to engage in an element of the hobby that may or may not scare them. I remember, like, when I got into the game, admittedly, I was dealing with like the old 3rd edition Dark Eldar warriors, which were just, they were complete and total throwbacks to the 80s. But they were pretty easy to put together. Same with the old school Catechins, and then I had some Metal Cadians and whatnot. But I was used to BattleTech models, which very simple to put together. There's no real issues with them. being exposed to a Games Workshop product, it all of a sudden everything became a little bit more complex because I'm now dealing with more models. I'm cleaning more models. I have to worry about posing, how they're going to rank up on the base. Like Fantasy was really tough for that one, making sure that everything ranked up properly. Even at the end of Fantasy, I wasn't really able to do it regularly, get them to rank up properly. Oh, geez, that's a lot of glue. And it was just something I wasn't really able to do all that consistently. But it is intimidating. It can easily scare a new player off, and make them, maybe think twice about whether or not this is a hobby they want to get into. Because, like, think of it this way: you're basically you're effectively going into a toy store, and you're telling the kid, "Okay, little Timmy, you can play with this toy, but you know what? You got to build it first." Or, you can have this toy over here. You don't have to build it at all. You take it out of the box and it's good to go right off the bat. 9 times out of 10, little Timmy is going to go with the toy that they don't have to build. And that's just the nature of things. Because I mean, we are a people of convenience. We will take a quick and easy road whenever we can, more often than not, unless we know that there's a real payoff at the end of everything. And I think for a lot of people, they don't exactly see the payoff in what we do. They don't necessarily see they don't see the sense of satisfaction that you get from completing a model. Or painting a model or whatnot. A lot of people just want to get into it. And that much is evidenced by the fact that, you still see people playing with hordes of gray plastic models. And you know what? You'll never hear me criticize them, because if that's what they get out of the game, that's what they get out of the game. And I'm not one to tell anyone how to enjoy their hobby, how to enjoy the game. And like for me, I definitely fall a little bit more into the hobby side of things, the painting, the assembling. And it's just the way of things. Like if I can play, awesome. I'd love to be able to play more often. But it's the way of things. People are going to engage in the hobby however they can. Well, yeah, I think almost everyone in this hobby has too much to paint, and it's just a matter of us getting there. That's for sure. I mean, I don't think anyone's ever really seen the extent of my studio and my backlog. But like I mean, I probably have enough stuff here that would put most online channels to shame outside some of the really bigger ones as far as available content. And I mean, that's from a combination of, 18 some years in the game. Yeah, your entire orc horde. You said you had what, like 10,000 points of orcs or something like that? I was actually playing around with that number the other day, seeing what I could come up for Imperials. And I was happy to say that I actually ran out of available points. with still stuff left on the table. But yeah, I mean, we do this hobby because we love it. We love the satisfaction of getting in there and painting everything up and seeing it all on the table. Like, honestly, like I'm looking at this, I've only done a sprue and a half of the Morannon Orcs. And let's see, what are we up to? It's been about 40 minutes or so. And already I'm looking at these guys going, you know what? They're going to look awesome when and if I can get them painted up and on the table. But, you look at the person getting into the game and, what do you want to do? Do you really want to present them with saying, okay, you got to buy these, you got to build them, you got to paint them, you got to get them onto the table at that point? Nah, these you just want to get them on the table. You just want to get them playing the game. And I think that's where some of these new sets, these new monopose guys really stand out. It is so much easier to just get them on the table. And I think by reducing as many steps as possible, it is good for the health of the hobby, just in general. Because you're getting people into the game. And you know what? These people who play just with the monopose gray models, get them on the base, get them on the table. You know what? I'm willing to bet like at least half of those people Yeah, they do love gray liberation armies. Half these people will probably turn around and at some point make an attempt to paint their armies. And it might work, it might not. We might end up with like another Sarastro, who's like an amazing painter and whatnot, or we might end up with just another guy who paints the dirt marine kicking around. But it doesn't matter because they're engaging with the hobby the way that they're happy with it. If they want to put the time in and learn how to paint, and eventually go on and get that golden demon or that slayer sword, awesome, amazing, all the power to them. That's wonderful. But if they start painting and they discover, what, it's not for them, they just want to roll some dice, get some guys on the field. Again, all the power to them on that one as well. And I think these monopose models are perfect opportunities for that. So let's see. I think I've gone about monopose a little bit too long at this point. Anyone who was interested is probably now just screaming at their screen telling me to shut up. So let's see. New topic. Let's see. Let's talk about Games Workshop's support of specialist games and bringing back older titles. And let's keep it relevant. And I'll start with talking about Lord of the Rings. I have to admit, when Lord of the Rings first hit as a game, I think the understanding is that they had the contract for the extent of the New Line Cinema's movies. So once Return of the King came out, that was supposed to be it. And all of a sudden, then Peter Jackson turns around and announces he's doing The Hobbit, and not just one Hobbit movie, but somehow turning it into 3. That is some mental gymnastics if I ever heard of any myself. But so naturally, the license gets extended because Games Workshop can keep selling it. I have to admit, with no Lord of the Rings movies on the horizon, I think there was like a prequel type thing going on or something like that's been in talks, but I can't say for sure. I'm actually really amazed that we're seeing more Lord of the Rings hit. And because I never like to see a game die. I mean it's terrible. I would love to see every game that comes out to always have like a nice long healthy lifespan, and and just let it run its natural course. So ending something abruptly or early because of a license running out is always kind of crummy. But yeah, out of all the games that Games Workshop was able to bring back, I was not really expecting Lord of the Rings. And that came down to, the most important factor coming down to that I did not think if it was still culturally relevant. Because one of the big things that the Lord of the Rings game was used for was an attempt to try and get people into the stores, recognizing Lord of the Rings from the movies, and then wanting to buy some Lord of the Rings models. And then try and hook them on the the much more expensive other Games Workshop products, the 40Ks, the fantasies, and try and convert them over that way. And unfortunately, because of how tightly guarded a lot of Games Workshop stuff is, I don't think we'll ever really know how truly successful that was. But yeah, it was an interesting choice, and I guess they still had enough of the resources to put into to Middle Earth and whatnot to justify keep putting content out there. And look at these things. These are old models. I think these date back to like 2004 or something like that. But they're great. They look fantastic. I've always marveled at the detail in the Lord of the Rings models, just in general. I was actually always kind of a little upset when there was official ruling that said, at least at Games Workshops in the area, that they wouldn't allow any sort of kit bashing between Lord of the Rings models and fantasy models because of the licensing involved. How extensive that policy was, I have no clue. But it was always a little upsetting because I remember looking at the elves when they came out with those awesome katana like blades and the interesting banded gold armor and whatnot. And, you know, even though I had no desire to play the game, I wanted to paint them. And I'm actually kind of surprised I never picked up anything to paint them with. But yeah, so it's great to see this coming back. License or not, well, obviously license. But it's great to see them just embracing the specialist games a little bit more, just in general. I mean, the fact that we've seen Kill Team come back, we've seen Blood Bowl come back. Blood Bowl was actually kind of caught me off guard because of how they treated the old world. I honestly did not expect them to do any licensing that involved the old world with Age of Sigmar out. Because you know, it almost felt like it was one of those we want to try and forget that the old world existed in favor of Age of Sigmar. But I mean, since then, what have we seen? We've seen 2 total Warhammer games. We've seen Blood Bowl, both video games as well as the box set. There's a Diablo-esque hack and slash Warhammer Fantasy game coming out. I can't remember what that one's called off the top of my head. But yeah, we're seeing support of it, and we're seeing support from the specialist games arm of things that, you know, even just 3-4 years ago we would have marveled at. Like, I mean, show of hands, how many people when Games Workshop announced that they were going to be bringing back specialist games, how many people kind of looked at that with a grain of salt and kind of said, yeah, that's actually a good point. Vermintide's another one that's come out recently. But yeah, how many people thought that that Games Workshop was just kind of blowing smoke up when it came to specialist games? Like, how many people actually thought we were going to be seeing these games come out and as more than just lip service? Like, we've actually seen a revamp of the rules themselves, which, you know, was very much, at least in my mind, unexpected. I was just kind of expecting, oh, well, you know, they might just re-release it and call it a day, make it nice and easy. Very low work on their part. It's just basically rebinding a book and reissuing it. But instead, we've actually gotten an updating of the rules. They're actually putting time and effort into the games, and they're making them fresh and exciting. I mean, Necromunda, like seeing that come back, that was amazing. Like, I was never, I don't want to say I wasn't into it when it first came out, but I was never able to get the gangs proper when it first came out. So I remember, you know, my gaming group let me proxy a bunch of the old Metalcadian models for Redemptionists, and I had a blast with it. I loved playing Necromunda, to the point where I was trying to where I made a bounty hunter, and I was trying to convince people to, you know, hire me on as a bounty hunter. It didn't work very well. But then again, I was also young and stupid. But, you know, I never thought I'd see that level of support again. So it's exciting. Like, the new Necromunda game is a lot of fun. Even what they're doing with some of these smaller box games. Like, we had Execution Force a couple years back with the Assassins. There was Deathwatch Overkill, which had its own sort of game and narrative attached to it. There was, oh, geez, what else is there? There's a bunch of these specialist games that are coming out, and they're all meant to be introductory games to the grand scheme of things. And what is it? There's the rumors that we might see Battlefleet Gothic again, which, you know, that would just get me stoked. I would love that. Take my Space Marine fleet out of mothballs. And then what else is there? I mean, I think some of us hold out hope for revised Mordheim, but I have to admit, out of all the potential specialist games, I hate to say it, I think Mordheim is the one least likely for us to see. And I think that might be because it's a little bit too steeped in the old world. And whereas it works for a video game, I don't necessarily know if it will work for a miniature game, simply because there's a lot of the old world models that are just, they're no longer in production. Either the molds broke, or they, you know, they destroyed them themselves, or whatnot, like, for whatever reason. And it's unfortunate. Mordheim, I think, was fantastic, and I think if they gave it the revised treatment like they did with what is it? Is it the Warhammer Quest? Oh, did the Warhammer? Really? They got so you're talking what is it? Silver Tower and Harrenhal, I think it is. They're not on the site anymore. Oh, jeez, that one just kind of snuck in under the radar. That's actually really unfortunate to hear. I never had a chance to play Silver Tower myself. Like I grabbed it. I like the components for it. I like the models for it. Never really got to play. But no, that's kind of upsetting. I'm gonna have to try and hunt down a copy of Harrenhal just because I don't. Harrenhal, Hammerfall, whatever the second box is. I'm gonna have to hunt down a copy of that then and see if I can get it. I'm sure somebody in the area probably has one that they're not looking to use anymore. But yeah, that's really upsetting. But anyway, yeah. So it's just it's great that we are seeing these specialist games come out, these gateway games, just because it's a way of getting people into the hobby. It's a way of letting them test the waters without having to go full hog. Because for any of us who have ever made a full Warhammer army, it is not cheap. Even back in the days when it was cheaper, it was not cheap. For whatever reasons, inflation or whatnot. It's always been a very expensive hobby. So, being able to allow somebody to just pick up and get maybe 10, 12 models, and even use those for future games, and use it to build onto things. It's another great element of the specialist games that I think for a while there, when Games Workshop was out in the wilderness, we lost. And it's wonderful to see it coming back. It's wonderful to see a passion, to see communication. And I mean, I mentioned it in a recent video I did on the Rogue Trader expansion for Kill Team, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out that video, I did do a unboxing for it. So go check it out if you're at all interested in Rogue Trader. I talked about the character and personality of some of the Games Workshop models, and they're still retaining a lot of the grim dark that keeps a lot of people in the game, but they're kind of adding a little cheekiness to it as well. And I think this cheekiness is something that is highly underrated and needs to be acknowledged more. And that much is just look at the Nurglings that are coming out these days. Those Nurglings are friggin' awesome. Just no matter how you slice it. I mean, you got Nurglings with the sassy poses with, what is it? There's a Glitchling in the Rogue Trader box that has like a wooden sword and a peg leg, basically playing pirate, which is just awesome. You have another one holding like a broken beer bottle, and it's that sort of character that's being put into the game that. It's just wonderful. The designers are having fun again. Not everything has to be uber grimdark. And to be completely honest, I think the tipping point with that was the 7th edition Space Wolf Codex, where everything just went so grimdark, and everything was wolf this and wolf that, and it became a little bit of a mockery of things. Like, everything was just so over-the-top wolf-like that I have to wonder if that was maybe a bit of a watershed for the design team, in that they're looking at things and kind of going, okay, guys, I think we've gone a little bit too far here. So it's the only reason you play Chaos, the cheekiness. Yeah, like they're having fun again, but they're still maintaining. They're still maintaining the strength of the design, of the influence, and they're keeping things thematic and grounded, but having fun. And I think that's a huge thing. I think a lot of people lose sight of that when they complain about the Primaris Marines, or they complain about some of the ridiculous naming conventions. Once again, I'll cite Space Wolves on this one. Everything is wolf this, wolf that. And I think it's important that we not lose sight that they are having a lot more fun with their design these days. And I think that's why some other companies were able to siphon off some of the core support that Games Workshop had, because they were willing to have a little bit more fun with their stuff. And I mean, I'm not gonna go in and cite specific examples because I'm running close to the hour length that I wanted to run this for. But it is it's just one of those things that you know, when the designers and developers and whatnot are having fun, that shines through, and that in turn allows people to have a lot more fun. And you know, it's a great example of yeah, you know what, Adam, the Wolfen are actually kind of cool, and to be honest, there was already some basis for those in the fluff with the 13th Great Company and everything. But I mean, it's more things like everything is getting named Wolf this, Wolf that, Storm, like everything is just on the nose as far as naming conventions go. And I think that's where some of the issue was. They were taking themselves too seriously, I think is what the problem was. And there's nothing wrong with taking your content seriously, but if it comes at the expense of having fun, I mean, eventually even your most diehard supporters are gonna stop having fun. And I think that's just the simple fact of the matter. So yeah, so you know what? I'm running very close to the hour. I think what I'm going to do, because I'm very close to finishing these guys off, I'm going to get these guys assembled, and that will be that for me. So yeah, so let's just keep chatting in the meantime. I'm trying to see comments whenever I can here. But yeah, like yeah. So sorry, I just lost my train of thought there for a second. But yeah, having some fun with stuff. Like, I think one of my favorite examples, actually, I know I said I wasn't going to cite an example, but I think I will. One of my favorite examples of a company having fun with what they're doing is Corvus Belli and Infinity. And the game itself, I mean, they take themselves seriously. They got some neat lore and neat fluff and whatnot. But also, when you start digging into their models themselves, you start noticing something very interesting. And that is that they have modeled a number of their miniatures off of famous personalities. So, like, just to throw a couple out there, I mean, you have the character of Achilles from Aleph in Steel Phalanx, and what they've done is they've modeled him after Brad Pitt from Troy, and then they also have Hector, who they modeled off after Eric Bana from Troy as well. Alternatively, you have the what is that? I think it's like the 42nd Highlander unit for Ariadne, and you look at the four guys in there, and it's basically it's Sean Connery, Christopher Lambert, Liam Neeson, and I don't know the actor's name, but the Irish guy from Braveheart, which is awesome. They even went as far. They had somebody cosplay as a Neo Terra Bolt at one of their events. And they actually made a model based on her. I wish I could remember the name of it. I know you can find it every so often, available through her own store. But you know, it's really cool. They have a little bit of fun with that. They model their stuff to be fun and enjoyable and engaging and whatnot. And they're great little Easter eggs. Another case in point, they have another character, Senior Massacre for the Nomads, and it's effectively Deadpool. I mean, it's there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is Deadpool, and there's lots of little cheeky things like that in Infinity, and it gives it a nice little bit of flavor to the world that you wouldn't otherwise expect. And you know, it's something fun that once you discover it, it makes your enjoyment of the game that much more. So, but let's see what else. So let's see. Got a couple minutes to kill here as I finish cleaning and then gluing these models. So what's left to talk about? You know, I'm just going to talk about what I hope to do with the Lord of the Rings stuff here. So I mentioned earlier in the video that I fully plan on going the Orcs of Mordor route. And a big part of that is because I love the look of the Nazgul model and the Ring Wraiths. So, you know, I'm definitely going to be doing that. So I'm going to be looking to grab the Nazgul at some point, to grab the Witch King, or variants of the Witch King rather, and grab Sauron obviously, and put that together. And you know, it'll fit with my with my preference to paint darker colors for sure. It'll be nice, quick, and easy in that regard. So yeah, the scale is a little bit smaller than typical Games Workshop. I think they're 25 millimeter scale, but somebody more knowledgeable than me could definitely correct me on that one. So yeah, they are smaller. Let's just see here. I think. Yeah, so let's see here. I got an old Macarius model right here, and just put the orc next to him. Oh, actually, that's pretty close. Yeah, they're slightly smaller. They don't have the heroic scale going on that Games Workshop or that 40K typically has, and that's the exaggerated features, the enlarged hands, head, feet type of thing. It's much more subdued than what you typically see, and take that for what it is. But because at least with the starter box stuff, they're mostly monopose models. Not a lot really needs to deal with. Like you're not dealing with a lot of lost pieces or anything like that, which is kind of nice. Yeah, they just go into the slot base and you're good to go to town. So we are into the home stretch here of this particular broadcast. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to trying this out. I'm looking forward to getting in touch with members of the community. Excuse the rustling of the bag. I gotta go reach for bases again. I'm looking forward to meeting some people in the community. I know a couple folk. I think I even saw one or two of you log on here. Whether or not you're still around, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I was very hesitant about jumping into the game because another game system, another thing to overextend and possibly spend money on and whatnot. But at the same time, even though I love 40K, I will always love 40K. It's nice to be able to branch out and see a little bit more of what's out there and just see what's on the horizon. And it makes things more interesting. You don't always have to do what the most popular game on the market is. And you get a feel for other design mechanics and what works and what doesn't. And I think anyone who's even a budding game designer, should probably try to play as many games as humanly possible. It's actually one reason I have mad respect for Ash at Guerrilla Miniature Games, because he plays so many games and he's somehow able to retain so much knowledge of the games he's playing in his head that he gets a really good feeling for everything and for what makes a good game and what doesn't. Straight slot based or straightforward foot attachment. Honestly, it depends on the model. The regular non-slotted bases are a lot nicer for doing scenic bases. The slotted bases gives you a much nicer contact point, and like you can take a look here. In this particular case, the actual slot at the bottom takes up a good chunk of the actual opening, whereas I find a lot of time the slotted base that's not necessarily the case, and that causes problems down the road for sure. If it's not properly fitted, it just creates issues with gaps and whatnot that you then have to fill. So if they're properly sized, I'm actually a fan of slotted bases. I think that I think they definitely have a lot of positive elements to them. But they can just as easily go pear-shaped on you. Like for instance, Infinity uses a version of slotted bases, and it took me a long time to really figure that one out. The problem is you got to cut into them, and you got to make the slot yourself, and so that requires some guesswork on where you got to cut and how big of a slot you need to make in it. And if you misgauge that, then you're gonna be stuck with a big open hole in your base, which then you have to fill, and it's extra things to take into consideration. So it really depends on what you're looking for. I think I think both bases have some definite pluses and minuses to them. I think like push comes to shove. Non-slotted bases I think have a little bit more utility to them, just because you can always cut the slot off. Not everything has to have that slot on it, and you can do some interesting things with basing as a result. And I mean that's one of the big things about this hobby is having those options. So yeah, I noticed that about the War Machine bases actually. I mean I didn't do a lot of War Machine, but in the brief foray I had into it, some of those bases were just a nightmare to deal with. And then I noticed even some of them because of like low contact points, like if you didn't use like they were next to impossible to use without a slotted base because the contact points weren't there. So everything you had to pin the ever living bejesus out of it, or you had to get creative with attaching it. And that was not good. That was not good. But I mean, I think we can forgive Privateer Press on that one because I think they've brought a lot of other really good things to the game. And I think that one might be a topic for another video because with this guy right here, that is my Morannon Orcs. They are all assembled. So I'm going to call it here. Let's see, where are we at? So about 6 minutes over what I wanted to do. But there we are. That is 3 sprues of 12? Of 8? I'm not going to count them. I think that's like maybe 24 or 36 orcs or something like that. So that is the Morannon Orcs from the Battle of Pelennor Fields assembled here. So anyone who tuned in, thank you so much for joining in. Oh, thanks. This was kind of neat. I think I am going to try to do this again. I'm going to keep it with the Lord of the Rings series for the first little while and, kind of share my progress and do these live updates. Also, if you happen to miss any, I'm going to try and put them onto YouTube down the road, so I'm going to have to figure out the whole saving of things and whatnot. So thank you very much for checking this out. For anyone who commented, awesome. Thank you so much. That was really cool to be able to interact with you guys. It kept me talking as well, not having to keep thinking of things off the top of my head. Hopefully more people tune in next time I do this. I will try to probably make it a Sunday thing. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that next Sunday. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to check out, obviously you're already on the Facebook page, but be sure to check out the YouTube channel as well, Aegis Brand Studios, trying to get a lot of content out there, battle reports, painting stuff, all that sort of things, some gameplay videos from other games. And obviously liking and commenting and subscribing to that helps that grow as well. But thank you so much. And as always, all of you, keep wargaming, keep having fun, keep being golden. Have a good one.